Welcome to this week's Aiding Your Game, our web series where we discuss all things RPGs, giving you tips, tricks, and hints on how to make your role-playing games more enjoyable. This week we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between stories that are serial versus series. Let's jump into it. Before we start, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We're hoping to grow. Please help us along. As you're preparing your game, you may be choosing one of the published adventure stories like Rime of the Frost Maiden or The Ghosts of Saltmarsh. You may be doing your own homebrew content and creating adventures and settings as you go. Either way, some of the variance in how you're discussing your campaign to your potential players can make all the difference in both the caliber of player you receive, as well as setting out what the players can expect from your campaign. Dialing back a bit, campaign has become very ambiguous as of late. So when I mention campaign, what I'm talking about is the group setting that you're going to play through with the same group players 90% of the time. Campaigns have become very diverse in what they represent. It could be the gaming world, such as Eberron or Faerun. It could be the story arc, such as Icewind Dale or Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It could even just be the location that you're choosing to play your game, strictly homebrew content versus anything published. So campaign is a little ambiguous. I refer to the campaign in this setting as the group of players who have gathered for a story from start to finish. Based on that interpretation of a campaign, we can start looking at the campaign that we're going to create for the players who are going to be joining us at the table. Two of the primary types of campaign story arcs are serial versus series. As I'm talking to people who are new to RPGs, I equate a lot of this back to television because it's a medium that most people are familiar with. When we look at television, we can see both examples of serial and story progression pretty easily. A lot of shows are story-based settings, similar to how I view the campaign. If you look at some series, the characters are generally the same and move from show to show with very little direction or progression. Take, for example, many of the Star Trek, which is a great serial-type show for the most part. A lot of the stories are not connected directly from one to the next to lead a path of direction or an overarching story. Very easily could be exploring one planet 1 week and overcome an obstacle and save the day, and then repeat that same formula the next week with a different problem, a different location, and different types of encounters. This is a serial style story in that the major characters stay the same. The situations are very reminiscent of each other. Each episode can be viewed independently without losing progression from one to the next. It's pretty easy to watch a Star Trek Season 1 show and then a Season 3 show and not be completely lost most of the time. Now, of course, there are progressions when characters leave or new characters are introduced, so it's a little more challenging, but a serial type approach, especially when we're doing so many games online, allow for a lot of opportunity for both creative aspects of the DM, in that you can create a small story, have your characters participate in that story, have resolution to that story, and move on to a completely different type of encounter. This can be greatly rewarding if you have a lot of different ideas that you can't quite sew together into one nice flowing story. It also helps because many times, even if you do have that one overarching story where each encounter progresses to dictate the next progressive encounter, many times the players are happy to go to the left field when you anticipated them going to the right. So it can be very frustrating for a GM to not be able to tie all those links together in the way that they envision them. Having a serial type campaign can definitely help with this. Additionally, it lets the player characters kind of feel out their characters and see if that's really what they want to play for a long run. As I've said, I'm a data nut, and a lot of the research I found shows that most groups are only together about 3 months online currently. With just a 3-month average, that makes it very hard for a GM to plan and execute a level 1 to level 20 progressive campaign. Serial stories may be right for that type of opportunity for us to gather, play, enjoy, and then move on. On the opposite end of that spectrum is a series that is not serial, meaning you need episode 1 to be able to follow what happens in episode 2, 3, 4, and so on. A good example in TV is Game of Thrones. If you miss out on season 1, it's very hard to know what's going on in season 2, 3, 4. In fact, the longer you go through the series, if you don't have those basic principles, it's hard to follow the character story arcs, the overarching story arc, and have an vested interest in both the story as well as the characters. If you really want to get an NPC hated by the players, that progression of continued showing how evil that NPC villain is very important. After all, in Game of Thrones, the more the season went on, the more people hated Joffrey or Ramsay Snow. I won't give any spoilers away, but to design that type of feeling from your players towards your NPC, you need a progressive story for them to really develop those emotional aspects through their characters and the character story. Pros are with this, it allows you to have a long-running story, play the long game, reintroduce aspects from early in the game that can be either beneficial or detrimental to the PCs based on their actions and interactions in that story. With this type of serial story, any decisions or actions they make early on can have vast consequences later in the game. These types of stories generally take a lot longer for everybody to get more vested into the story and to be able to impact the story where everybody feels that it was something that was interactive from both the GM and the player standpoints. If you're telling a story and just having the players along for the ride with very little opportunity for them to impact that story, it can be very hard to manage. You have to be able to know what their actions and interactions in your gaming world or gaming environment or campaign are going to have on that long game. You have to be able to be agile, pre-plan, and be able to change things on the fly based on those character interactions and actions. Now, this is great for a long series. Again, the data shows that most campaigns are only lasting about 3 months at current. So it may be a good idea to utilize a series-style story in a shorter compact, not anticipating level 1 to 20, not planning on a 2-year run, but having a smaller series story arc can be very rewarding in seeing from the birth of the story through the end of the story, how the player characters were able to interact with the gaming world. Many of the published series already do this. Items like Icewind Dale give the area, and based on the characters' actions, they can interact with that game world, and it's a progressive act from one step to the next. The story unfolds over quite an amount of growth and development for the player characters in the story. There's no way at the beginning, at their first introduction to 10 Towns, that they can ultimately face that final showdown with the antagonist of the overarching story. They're just not powerful enough, they don't have enough information, and they would just be mopped up. Through progression, they gain the abilities to both find out what's going on and ultimately confront the antagonist of the story. Now, regardless of whether you play serial style or story styles, neither direction is incorrect or wrong. Both have their values. The biggest opportunity for you to consider is what's going to be best for you and your gaming table. To help you prepare for either a serial style story or a series style story, I've got a couple of ideas just for you. If you're working on a serial style story, there is a fantastic post that's been going around social media talking about the longest road in the world. Through this road, you get to go through every climate there is on Earth, all these different continents, cultures, countries, and cities. A fantastic opportunity if you were to think of your PCs of just the goal is traversing the road. Think of each weekly episode or each weekly season or bi-weekly or monthly, whatever your table has decided to play at, having them stop at a next section of the road. This could almost be like Michael Knight driving from one town to the next, helping those in need, with each season bringing a new challenge and encounter that can vastly be different from the previous one based on different culture, different temperatures, different geography even. It allows you the opportunity to, one week, pit them against undead without any type of reason behind it, and the next, facing massive beasts like cataplebius or dinosaurs. And because of the progression of your serial style story, they're just traversing this longest road in the world. It can fully make sense and allow for a lot of immersive opportunity for the players to question what's next. This type of serial style story also allows them, if they want to change things up and possibly swap in one character for another along the road, a good opportunity for their creativity in designing different characters that they may want to explore and try playing, different combinations of class and race and subclasses even. It's a good opportunity for that serial style story to shine through and really be taken advantage of by both the GM for their creativity as well as the players for their creativity. This also allows for a more open opportunity for the members of the gaming table to change out due to scheduling, due to any type of commitments that they may have come up in the real world. This type of opportunity allows you to keep the structure of the game the same, even though each series will be a little bit different than the last. As for a story-based campaign, the same type of thought process can be taken in. You just have to think on a more grand scale, and again, think of the long run. As the party is traversing this longest road, what is the ultimate goal of the antagonist? Maybe they're trying to take down the road. Maybe they're trying to use the road to transfer illicit goods, or even create patterns in the road to summon demons and overtake the material plane. Regardless, if the structure stays the same and you have the opportunity to weave from the beginning, each progressive piece making an impact to the next, that can be a fantastic piece. Now, both of these can collide in a small manner if you have overarching series. For instance, in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the Dominion War was an overarching story that took up multiple episodes. It was a shorter story in that it wasn't from start to finish. You didn't miss anything by not watching the first and only watching the last, but it was a small story setting, so almost a series story, but condensed over a shorter amount of time. So it wasn't the whole run, but just a small part of it. This can be great for the serials in that you just have overlapping pieces. Stopping at one town may have to go out and clear woods, and that may lead you into the mountains right around that town. As long as they come back to the road to continue that journey, your serial is going to be fine. If you're a new GM or even an experienced GM who's just facing some challenges with whether it's writer's block or sewing some of your story concepts together, I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you leave a comment below and subscribe. I'm going to answer each comment, and as we continue to grow, hopefully drive a stronger community that's based on building each other up and helping each other along the way as we continue to drive better storytelling, better immersion, and better experiences at our own tables. Starting next week, I'm going to add an additional video that just talks about game ideas in different RPGs. We focus a lot on D&D, but I wanted to give an opportunity to show some love for some additional genres. So we're going to have a very exclusive special that's going to focus on a lot of different game systems, game stories, but you'll be able to also fold them into D&D should you choose. Until next week, keep gaming and don't hesitate to let us know, where will your adventures take you? Thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed. Here's an additional video that we feel you may like, and be sure to hit the subscribe button as we continue to grow and develop. Our first milestone of 25 subscribers is going to lead to 5 of those subscribers drawn at random to receive a free t-shirt. Make sure to share and help us grow. Thank you, and be sure to comment below. Where will your adventures take you?